What's going on, guys? So in this video, we're going to talk about what has been working for me on eBay, what am I currently doing right now, and what's my strategy moving forward. So I kind of explained that I would be trying some things and I could report back on that. And so what I've learned is that it's working so far. It's working, and as much as it's been a lot of time to list up cards, and I've had a lot of cards that I just end up relisting, everything eventually sells. And so we're going to go over what my strategy has been and what's working for me so far. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for everybody or work for you, but it's been working for me thus far, and I'm really happy with it. I'm coming up on 500 sales on eBay, so I'm really excited about that. I want to push towards that 1K number soon. I just have to find time to list, which is very hard between, taking care of myself, going to the gym, having a family, taking care of Aspen, running the bar, doing YouTube videos. It's a lot to throw eBay on top of that. And like, eBay and YouTube are not my full-time jobs, so I do have something that takes up a majority of my time running the bar, so it's really hard to squeeze all this stuff in. But without further ado, let's get into it. So here I have a stack of cards that I'm basically going to go over. A lot of stuff they've been pulls from our live streams, but a lot of these cards do have bids right now. It's very interesting because I think a lot of people think that their bulk or their hits that aren't really good hits aren't worth anything. And what I found is that there's value on just about anything. There's a card for everybody out there, right? And cards that are in the cheaper price range, like sub $20, this is what I found the most success with, is selling cards that are under $20. I found it very hard to sell and liquidate high-end cards. So what I've previously thought is that it's much easier to get equity back on expensive cards. And while that is true, it is true that when you sell one card for $3,000 and you picked it up for $2,700, $2,500, you're gonna net a profit on that. Even with the fees, you're gonna have money afterwards, and you're not gonna take a big hit from it. But your market reach for that kind of card, that kind of Pokemon card, is going to be much slimmer than it is if you're going to be selling cheap cards like this, like that Giratina V-Star or this Radiant Sarina. And we're going to go over, let's see if it'll focus in on that. We're going to go over a lot of cards that are in here. And some of you may even think like, why in the world is he selling this? Is he taking time to sell these? But because I do want to bolster up my numbers on eBay, but also I'm finding that it's just like when I first started selling on eBay, I had a lot more fun and a lot more success, and I think better margins on the cheaper cards, and also way less stress, right? Shipping out an expensive card is stressful for me. I know as I do this longer, it'll get less stressful. And then also the eBay vault has been helping a ton. I've got my first big card up for sale. We're going to go over these little cards in a second, but before I do that, I recently picked up a Crystal Lugia, which, if you guys don't know what Crystal Lugia is, it's definitely one of my favorite cards of all time. It's definitely a grail card to me. Let's see if it'll focus in on that. There we go. Definitely a grail card to me. It's just an absolutely beautiful artwork, and I love this card. And I saw a good deal for one, and I decided to grab it. It was $2,500. I tried to go lower at $2,400, but just wouldn't budge. I think it was set maybe, or maybe I did get it for $2,400. Either way, $2,500. I think it was set at $2,700, and they really weren't budging below that price. So I picked that card up. And this could be a risky play because honestly, the sales go from anywhere from 2.2 to 2.3 up to 2.5. I've already received offers that are break even on the card, so that's awesome because it tells me that, hey, what I've paid for, what I have in the card, I can quickly get out. Now, this is important because it's going to apply to all of the higher end slabs. If this is the direction you want to go like me and you want to have some cards in your eBay store that are higher end, this is a great way to go about it. So the eBay vault is essential, I think. If you want to only do sales on eBay and you don't want to be buying cards privately and then sending them to the vault, which can be a whole process. For me, I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted to be able to buy cards on eBay, have them authenticated, or they're already in the vault, or I can send them to the vault. So some things on that. So first off, buy it now cards that are in the US, not international, which eventually they need to fix this, but buying cards in the US only that are buy it now can always be sent to the vault if they're $250 or more. So this is great for all the grail cards that I want to sell in the future, like crystals, gold stars. You know, if I see a good price and I feel like, you know, that person needs the money, but I don't necessarily need the money as much. What I need is really, really nice cards in my eBay store. I want to showcase what I have. So for me, $2,500, $2,400, it was a no-brainer for me. I've seen sales for the Crystal Lugia around 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, all the way up to $3,000. So I knew there was some room there to actually have a margin and a profit. But with the vault, you can, if it's already in the vault, if the seller already has the card in the vault, this is as good as it gets in terms of getting the card immediately and having it listed immediately. So basically it's an ownership transfer. It's kind of weird. You don't really have the card. It is kind of digital. It's out there in the vault of eBay. I forget what state it's in, but it's in a state where there are no sales taxes, so they can get away with doing this whole vault workaround. But basically, if it's in the vault already, like the Crystal Lugia was, it goes straight to the vault and boom, you can have it listed immediately. They take scans of the card, so it looks very professional. It looks way better than any of the photos that I take. So if it's not in the vault, It'll usually have a strip at the bottom that shows your options for sending it to the vault, if you can send it to the vault. So this is one thing that I think is kind of weird when it comes to the vault in eBay. If it's an auction, some auctions have a setting where the buyer has to pay immediately. And if it has that setting where the buyer has to pay immediately, basically your card will get paid for and sent to your address immediately. You won't be able to send it to the vault. So this is another weird thing that either I'm unsure about or eBay hasn't quite worked it out yet. But sellers like Z&G Emporium, for example, there's somebody that I recently got my Crystal Charizard off of and sent that to the vault and avoided sales taxes and fees. And then that card got withdrawn and sent to me for $50, which is way less than the taxes would have been on that card. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened on eBay for Pokemon. And we've had the vault for a while, but people seem to be really unsure about using it. And I get it. It's very stressful when especially when you're buying a higher end card, thousands of dollars. You don't want to just buy it and then pay taxes on it and then have it shipped to you. Okay, the whole point is to save money on this, see if you can send it to the vault, not have to pay sales fees, and then make money on it like that. Like the whole thing is to make it, you know, as easy as possible for sellers to change ownership without having to deal with taxes and fees. This has been the biggest reason that we've seen a downturn on eBay, in my opinion, and people selling on eBay, is because it's just not feasible, right? It's just constantly someone buys it, then they have to sell it for way more to account for the eBay fees. So you don't have to deal with this if you're doing it with the vault. So there are certain sellers that after you win the auction, it allows you to decide what you want to do with that card. What are your delivery options? So you also, this is important, you have to enroll in the eBay vault. It doesn't cost you anything to enroll in it. You can enroll in it and never use it, but you won't have any of these options, because one thing that I noticed was that before I had the vault, I was never really given options to send the cards to the vault, right? Or if I was, I had to enroll in the vault to take on that option, right? If you're in the vault already, if you're enrolled in the vault already, it takes 2 seconds. Then you'll have the options when you check out to send those cards from that auction to the vault and not pay any sales tax or fees on it. Now, starting this year, there is a 3% buyer premium, which what I believe that means is that when you do sell the card, regardless of whether, I think if it's in the vault, it might be, this is one part I'm not 100% sure on. I think if it's in the vault, it might be just 100% transfer, no fees at all. I think that's the case. But I think if it's a buyer that wants to pull it out of the vault, you have to pay a 3% fee. And mostly that's just because of the cost of the time for someone to go into the building or the warehouse or wherever they have all these cards and pull them out. One thing that I worry about with the vault in terms of long-term storage, like if you wanted to just store your collection in the vault, I wouldn't recommend it because we don't know where the vault is necessarily. I would like to actually do more research and look up where the vault is, what kind of facilities they have. I think being eBay and being archive, paper products, they're going to have really good environment settings for the vault. but I'm just worried that, you know, if you have your personal cards in the vault, when you pull them out, they could be damaged or dinged. You don't know until you have it in hand. And a lot of people feel like you don't own it until you have it in hand. I think that's the biggest issue with the vault, is the perception of your cards are in the vault, so you don't really own them. But for quick flips and for selling cards, I think the vault is extremely necessary, because you buy the card, especially if it's already in the vault, the ownership transfers. That's what it shows you on your purchases on eBay. It shows that the ownership has transferred, and then boom, you can have it listed immediately. Also, one thing I like about the vault is it gives you a second to rethink what you're trying to do with that card, right? I got another gold star that I'm excited to announce that's on the way now. I did decide to withdraw it, even though it was a really, really tough decision for me, because I got a really good deal on it. And with the eBay vault, I knew that I had a really good margin on that card, because the market on them, the last one was sold for a couple $100 more than what I paid. So I knew there was some margin there. But I decided to withdraw it because upon a card going into the vault, if it's not already in the vault does PSA scans, I believe. They authenticate it, but they do their own scans, and it just looks crystal clear. It allows you to really, really go over the cards and go over the details of the cards accurately. And so after reviewing the card that I just picked up, I decided, instead of putting it in my eBay store, I was going to send it to me for my personal collection. But I really, really wanted to put it on my store because it seemed like a no-brainer play for me. Not to mention, there's no examples of the card I picked up for the price that I picked it up for on eBay right now. I know I could have undercut other sellers and sold this card very quickly, but it is what it is. Anyways, now that I've blabbered on about the vault, because you guys have been asking about the vault, I didn't want to make a separate video about the vault, but it's very easy, guys. If you're the least bit interested in the vault, just take a dive, okay? Just take a dive, take a chance. It's really worth it. I was nervous about the vault, but I ended up using it and I love it now. It's definitely essential for my eBay store. But let's go into these cheap cards. So these cheap cards allow me to ship with a 63-cent envelope. Most of my auctions go for a couple pennies. They all start at 1 cent, but the shipping is $1. Now this ensures that if somebody bids on a card and they win it, like some people have been like, oh, they honored my bid. This is amazing. This seller honored my 1 penny bid. Of course I'm going to honor it. These cards, I'm just trying to get sales on these cards. And honestly, at the end of the day, like, I don't really know what all this bulk is really worth, and I don't really care what it's worth because it's bulk. I have way too many cards here. I'm pulling cards every single week in the live streams. I have duplicates of cards, so I have to sell them. And another thing that's really important is that if you want to sustainably collect Pokemon cards, it really helps to have an eBay store and to be able to offload those cards. And once you build up your reputation and your credibility on eBay, you start to not really care about the fees because you're able to just get off all your extra stuff. And granted, I could go to a shop, unload all these for 60% of TCG Player, but I wouldn't be making any progress on my eBay store and how I want it to grow and prosper in the future. So we're going to go ahead and go through a lot of these cheap cards that have current bids right now that are kind of odd, but people do want, whether it's for master sets or competitive play, which is another thing. It's very important to understand how the card game works, which I have a very limited knowledge of this, but I am beginning to be more into it. I'm pulling out random trainers like this Pokemon Catcher and the Super Rod, and I'm realizing that even cards like that have some kind of value attached to them, right? Even the bulk has some kind of value attached to it. And I've started to think, instead of just selling my random hits and like all of my vintage bulk, maybe there's even a market for like trainer cards, selling play sets of cards. Who knows? There's so many avenues on eBay right now. And I personally feel that the hobby is simmering down a little bit, so I feel like it's a good time to be on eBay and making sales, because I feel like there were a ton of people the last 3 years trying to sell Pokemon cards. I feel like that number has dropped drastically and there's less sellers than there were before. So I feel like it's the easiest time to actually sell cards because no one's willing to really put in the work and do that. So I've personally had really good success with selling my cards. I have 100% positive feedback. I have fantastic customer reviews and feedback, which is awesome. Thank you to everybody that's purchased from me and picked up something. with these cheaper cards, I use a thermal printer. That's helped my business a lot. People were begging me to get a thermal printer. It has changed everything. The thermal printer is an absolute must. You get some envelopes, you get a thermal printer, and then you're good to go. You can pump these cards out, pump your sales out. Now, if I had more time, this was a full-time gig, I would try to sell like 100 cards a day. I really would. But I just don't have the time for that. The main time that I list cards is on a Sunday night when I have some downtime, or on Wednesdays nights when I'm off, but I also do a live stream. I'm always working. I work 5 days a week, and then I do the live stream on one of my days off. So I literally have one real day off. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this, show you guys part of the cards that are working for my hustle. This Giratina V-Star is doing really well. This is a competitive card. This is an awesome card, and I think it's still currently competitive, but this one's doing really well. Any of the V cards do really well. A lot of people just like toss their V cards or give them away. V cards are hits. They're awesome. They can be competitive. And so a lot of these V cards do really well. The 151, don't mind the price stickers. These are just random sleeves that I used. But even though this card probably will go for $4. Wiggly Tough EX, there's cards like this that I feel like a lot of people would be like, oh, that's not a real hit. 151 in particular right now is doing very, very well. 151 cards sell really well, whether they're basic EX. Even the holos, I've seen some graded holos do really, really well. So you guys shouldn't discount the value of cards just based on the fact that they're not the hits you want, or they're considered bulk, because there's a purpose for everything. And you never know, someone might be trying to build a deck with Wiggly Tuffs, and you happen to have yours up for auction starting at nothing. And of course they're going to be happy to pick up a card basically for nothing. And at the very least, the reason I set my shipping at $1 is so that at the very least, after 63 cents for that envelope, I know that I net 37 cents on the cards, right? Now, that is nothing. Maybe it's really not worth it for me to do this, but I'm building up a reputation, and there are people now that are repeat customers. More and more now, I'm having sales where it says repeat buyer, repeat buyer, repeat buyer. People are happy with the stuff that I'm selling, and that kind of makes me happy. This is one of the ways that I feel like I can give back to the community a little bit. But yeah, Wiggly Tough EX. Next up, we got another EX, the Alakazam EX from 151. All these X's do really well in the $4 to $5 range. The Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard EX basic cards, not the SIRs. These do really well. These typically do $7 to $10, and if they're graded in a PSA 10, they can do even better than that. I think there were reported sales of this Venusaur in a PSA 10 around $40, $50. So that was pretty cool. But these are just raw sales. Now, the last Blastoise EX sale that I had, this price is probably not too far off, but again, these are just sleeves. The last sale that I had for this Blastoise EX was around $15. Plus the dollar ship. So that was $16 for this Blastoise EX. Most likely somebody wanting to build it into a competitive deck, or they want it for their 151 master set. These 151 cards are very modern right now. They're competitive, and 151 is such a fantastic set. They're doing a reprint of 151 right now. So I suspect there'll be a lot more product flooding the market, and maybe even I'll be able to get some more TikTok deals for the 151 UPC, and that will allow me to grab a ton more of these by opening them and selling them. I do believe that with 151, if you get a decent enough UPC, and I'd say 70 to 80% of my UPCs, if I can get them off TikTok for 70, 80 bucks even, you can pretty much break even, right? I'm gonna mention this again. I've mentioned this several times, but every time I sell these, they tend to do well. I don't know if it's just my eBay store or what, but every time I sell any of the Pokemon 151 promo cards, particularly this Mew almost always goes for like $10, which I just sold one for a buy it now for $13, I believe. But typically they go for around $10. I would say a lot of people think the set is worth maybe $10 for all three, or maybe $15, but you can get a little bit more out of these by listing them as singles. You have to take into account that people don't know everything about the market, especially if they're coming back into the hobby to try to get back into 151. they don't know everything about the hobby. They might be looking at these cards and not even realize they come in a 151 UPC. And so they're like, oh, this is a really cool card. I'm going to beat that person's bid of $10 because I really want this card. And then people overpay. This does tend to happen. I'm not saying you have to bid on my auctions, but typically in auctions, people get competitive. There's that competitive side of it. And so they end up overpaying a little bit on their cards. So I see that a lot in my auctions. I'm like, who paid this much for this? But it is what it is. I'm just showing you guys what's worked for me. This Curiam VMAX, this is a sweet little card. I just got another one of those in the live stream. That'll probably go for $3 to $4. These hollows always get a bidder. Most likely for master setting. You know, back in Sword and Shield especially, you probably couldn't do this as easily with Scarlet Violet, but with Sword and Shield, you weren't guaranteed to get a hollow. So the hollows are still considered hits. People still need them for their master sets. So we got some random hollows in here, and believe me, these might not go for the random stickers that are on there. But these cards are probably going to go for $1 or $2 just so somebody can have them for their master set. Another man's trash is another man's treasure, so to speak. Now, if I didn't have these cards, they would be going into my master sets, but they're duplicate cards, which this is the whole thing about making the hobby sustainable. You don't want to end up with a bunch of bulk and then you just take a 40% hit on it because you go to your local card shop and just take whatever they give you. And then you roll that over into another card that you overpay for. Like, I would definitely recommend starting an eBay, get a thermal printer, start selling cheap cards. It's so worth it. You build up a bunch of feedback, you build up credibility, and it makes it easier to sell stuff down the road once you have that credibility. Okay, we got another V card here, Tornadus V, Noivern V, a lot of V card, even this Arctivish that I feel like no one's going to want. I know someone's going to bid on this card because it's Evolving Skies, and they're probably going to need it for a master set. This Sandaconda, I already had this Sandaconda, probably, I would say people's one of the least favorite Pokemon hollows in that set for, what is that, Sword and Shield base. Yeah, Sandaconda, but somebody's going to buy this, whether it's a penny or $1. Urshifu V, we got Zarude V. We got a gold card from, is that Silver Tempest or no? Brilliant Stars. We got a Brilliant Stars kind of gold Urshifu VMAX card. These, I will say, the VMAXs typically go for around $3 to $5, whereas the Vs typically only go for $1 to $2. Maybe $3 if it's a really nice V like Umbreon V or any of the Evolutions Vs. Just a cool Pokemon in a V. The Charizard Vs, those do really well. We got another VMAX here, this Vaporeon VMAX. Somebody is going to bid on this for their master set for Evolving Skies. So that card's probably going to go for $3 to $5. This is also another EV evolution. These do really, really well. This is the Jolteon illustration from Brilliant Stars. I love that Jolteon, by the way. We got a Dracozolt, which is one of my least favorite Pokemon. Not one of my least favorite Pokemon. It's one of the Pokemon I just don't care for. But Dracozolt V, that's Evolving Skies. Somebody is going to need that guy. We've got quite a few of those out of the heavy hitters boxes. We got a Tyranitar from Battle Styles in here. Or no, not Battle Styles, Darkness Ablaze. Regular hollow, that'll probably go for a couple pennies or maybe $1. Lucario. Some of these are just cool hollows, and people love to buy stuff, especially when it doesn't break the bank. It doesn't hurt them, especially if they're building their binder just on Pokemon they like. It doesn't cost anything to buy into any of my auctions for these cheaper cards. One of my favorite hollows from Fusion Strike. I absolutely love this for Alligator. Super sick. And a lot of these cards, we also have to remember, a lot of these cards can be put into a competitive deck. They can be competitive. They can be helpful. This Marshadow, I have a feeling, is competitive. Let's look at that for a sec. Yeah, this Marshadow, I feel like, is competitive. We've got this Breaks In. I think any of these these trainer gallery cards, any of these look phenomenal. I think all of these have done well. Those typically never sit for me. They always sell. Pretty much all the VMAXs, almost all the Vs. Occasionally I have a V that I have to relist. All of the 151 promos, those always sell. This is a sick Entei. You can't really see him, but this is a sick Entei from what? Evolving Skies? Yeah, this Entei is going to sell. Somebody will need it for their master set or deck build. We got a VMAX Sylveon. It's an EV Evolution. That is going to sell. Charizard V, perfect example of a regular V card that will go for a couple dollars most likely. I think it's at $3 or $4 right now. I'm going to say it's probably going to end around $7 just because it is a Charizard card, and people that want to grade these cards and hopefully reap the rewards of grading are going to pay more. That's another thing you have to take into account is even though you're selling cheap cards that might not be worth it to you, someone else might see a potential in these cards, especially like this Charizard has really good centering, barely any wear at all. This would be a good card to get graded potentially. And yeah, if you've got $5 in it and it grades $15 and it comes back $20 and you get a 10, that card's probably worth $30 or $40 and a 10. Like there are little plays to be made off that, even though I don't really recommend doing that. Okay. We've got the Mew metal card. Now these are tricky because these metal cards are heavy and you might have to pay a little bit more in postage for these metal cards. That's one thing I don't like. I wish they would discontinue the metal cards personally. That's just a headache for me to ship those out. Jinx, we've got a Jinx. Like this is a card that I feel like is one of the least wanted cards of 151, but it's still going to sell because it is a 151 card. People are going to need that for their master set. We've got a Radiant Sarina, another card I wouldn't think is going to get sold, but it will. We've got a full art. All the full arts get sold. They typically do really, really well. We've got another V card that'll sell. Togekiss, that'll sell. Daisy's Help, that's a full art, that'll sell. Even these Celebrations cards, you might look at Celebrations cards and think like, yo, that is all bulk Orion, but somebody out there didn't get Celebrations. They didn't open Celebrations. They never had Celebrations. So for them, just like me, when I first saw Celebrations, they look at this Lugia and they're like, yo, that card is actually sick. And it is. It's actually a really, really nice card. It's definitely a good artwork for Lugia. My only gripe with Celebrations is these little icons right here with the Pikachu head. But yeah, that'll sell. Ho-Oh, that'll sell. Kyogre, that will sell. Groudon. Now, those are probably going to go for a penny. But you know what? If it makes somebody happy and it gets me some feedback, then that's worth it for me. Not all of these are going to pull profit, but a lot of these are going to pull profit based on me opening a pack or opening a box for $40 and I get a couple V cards and a couple full arts. It allows me to nearly break even on those products, which is really important. It's about keeping the hobby sustainable. It is not worth it to open products, but it definitely helps when I'm able to ship these out and sell them quickly, so that way I don't have a bunch of random cards stacking up here at the house. Gyarados V from Evolving Skies, that will sell. Okay, and then we get into what looks like the rest of these are all vintage. What's that? We got a Tyranitar V, that'll sell because it's a V card. All right, the rest of these are vintage and not even really like, we're not even like Pikachus or Charmander or Squirtle or Bulbasaur. These are random like commons. These are random commons from WotC bulk collections that I bought like a year or two ago. These are super random cards. None of them are really that valuable, but the thing is these cards are 20 years old and people coming back into the hobby that might want to work on these sets can pick these up for a penny sometimes from me, and you know they might pick up a couple of them and they're happy about it. It might help them fill out their sets, but these vintage WotC cards have done really, really well for me. That was an experiment that I wanted to test out that honestly I didn't think was going to work out, but these have done really well. Sometimes I do have to relist them because it's just not what people are looking for. But every week I get orders for these WotC bulk cards. And the reason that I started that was because I noticed that there were sellers selling vintage Japanese cards, which are much better quality. You know, you can get a really good price point on those cards too. So there actually are really good margins with vintage bulk Japanese. But I'm not a huge Japanese collector, but I love buying bulk for English vintage. So I wanted to test this out with English vintage. and it worked all the same. Now, when there are rares or uncommons, typically those actually do go for a little bit more, like a couple dollars. But typically with the commons, they go for 10 cents, 15 cents, and then that dollar to ship. So I net like 50 cents per card. It really, you know, I'm banking on, you know, multiple people buying multiple cards. That's what I'm banking on. But if it doesn't happen that way, I know that I'm still getting at least like 40, 50 cents a card. And that is worth it for me in terms of doling out all that bulk, because you can buy a stack of bulk vintage WotC cards right now. You can buy, I mean, this is how it was a year or two ago, but you could buy a bulk stack of those cards for like $30 and you could get like 200 of them. Right? Like you could actually find stacks of old cards and get good deals on them in auctions or buying collections locally. And so for me, it makes perfect sense to use those as my ammunition because I have stacks. Like, guys, let me just show you how much vintage bulk I have stacked up that I plan to sell and get rid of. It's a lot. Like all of this is bulk. This is filled to the top with vintage bulk. It might not zoom in on it, but you guys kind of get the idea. Like this is filled up to the top. We got a little Articuno right there, but like it's just I have a ton of vintage bulk, so selling that stuff is a no-brainer for me because it allows me to build up that sales feedback. And my last point is definitely understanding competitive viability for cards. Like if cards can be competitive, there's going to be a buyer out there. So you can definitely nitpick the cards out of your polls that are competitive if you are aware of their competitive nature, and you can sell those cards probably for a buy it now for a slight premium. And that's something that I'm thinking about because I know that there's more money in just doing a bunch of listings, setting them all up, buy it now for like $1 a card, and just having them sit that way. That way, when anybody needs the cards, they can just buy it right then and there. That is one caveat to auctions, I feel like, is that if somebody wants it then and there, they can't just buy it. They have to wait till the auction ends. And so I think that's one of the biggest cons of an auction is that it's a waiting game, whereas buy it now, if somebody really wants it, buy it now is where you're going to get those impulse purchases. So that's something that I'll consider in the future is listing all of my bulk cards as buy it now, so that people can shop for their bulk right there, then and there when they need it. But for right now, we're just doing auctions. I'm just trying to build up my numbers. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys. And then one last thing, since I haven't yet put these in the binders yet, we got all my alt arts that I picked up recently. You can pick up alt arts from your local shops and probably sell these for a nice premium. But with any card over $20, you are going to have to pay $4 to ship that card out, unless it's included in the buyers paying for it. But that's one thing I really like about the cheaper cards is that you can, like the sweet spot is selling a card that's worth like $10 to $12 and sell it for like $18, right under $20. Then you're netting a nice little profit margin. You're shipping that card out, costs you nothing. That's a sweet spot for me. So in the future, I'll be looking at going to my local shops and looking at cards that are sub $20, but that are nice cards, to make some kind of margin on and shipping out cards like that. Right now, I'm testing some things out, but what I've noticed is vintage bulk sells really well. Anybody can sell vintage bulk. I genuinely believe that. And I could sell these as lots, but when I've sold as lots in the past, they've done horribly. I never do well when I sell lots of cards, unless there's some really good stuff in those lots that kind of boosts the exposure and what people are willing to spend on it. But typically I like to just do stuff one by one. I feel like that does better overall. And it gets me a lot more exposure with finding more buyers and more customers. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I meant for it to be like a 10-minute long video, but you know how I do. I always rant. Anyways, peace out, y'all. I look forward to tomorrow. We are going to probably do a mail day video. I've had something here for a couple days now, but I've been waiting on it for the perfect time. We'll probably do a mail day video unless something else comes up, and I end up coming up with something else that I want to talk about. Anyways, peace out, guys. Thanks for watching.